topic we've covered a couple of times this week, and that's this blueprint for university free speech. The Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, has published his plan, and this is really about making sure that universities do their job of protecting free speech. I have to say, I can't imagine 30 years ago when I was at uni, ever it being even a concept that you would no platform people, disinvite people, or not invite people because you didn't like their views, or someone else didn't like their views or was offended by what they had to say. The idea that any idea or concept or argument could not be made because someone else was upset by it, and that those people should be shut down, would have seemed quite bizarre. Now, quite the norm. And if you don't really care what happens in universities, well, you probably should, because what's happening in universities is going to be happening in your workplace next. Let's talk to Nick Hillman. He's director of the Higher Education Policy Institute and joins us now. Good morning to you, Nick.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. Let's face it, Gavin Williamson is not necessarily a popular figure among either teachers or university academics. But I have to say, on this issue, I think he's got everyone banged to rights in terms of the government needing to step in and even to fine universities if they don't protect free speech. Do you agree?
Well, there's a lot in that. I mean, he's doing what he promised to do in the manifesto the last election. And there have been, as you said in your introduction, some pretty egregious examples of free speech being trampled upon in British universities. There are challenges in tackling that. So, for example, if you have very tough rules, student groups can get tied down in red tape and just not bother inviting people to speak in the first place.
Yeah.
We don't know. He said there's going to be a free speech champion for universities. We don't know who that person is going to be. And
I'd make it Toby Young, the leader of the Free Speech Union. I think that would be a very clear signal that they mean business.
I wondered if you'll be putting your own name in, Julia.
I haven't got the time. I'm busy fighting lockdown. I can only do so many jobs at one time.
Well, I mean, one of the other really important things that was announced yesterday was extending some of the rules that already exist to student unions.
Yeah.
So a lot of the challenges actually have come from students against other students who've invited someone to speak. But a lot of the vice chancellors I meet are actually pretty robust about defending free speech themselves, but it's often student-on-student battle.
And that's the thing. I mean, the rise of the, frankly, little fascist student, I find extraordinary, because people trying to shut down debate and closing people down and, purging people from their jobs and the like. I mean, I don't know what other word to use, but we're constantly told by those who claim that there isn't an issue with free speech, and largely there will be people on the left saying there isn't an issue with free speech on campus, totally ignoring the fact that, for instance, poll after poll show that academics say they don't feel they can, or students actually, they can be open about, for instance, being a supporter of Brexit, or that they can say they vote Conservative, for instance. And there is just a sort of one mindset going on. And there was a poll we discussed on the show last year where academics were saying they would not actually even be willing to sit next to someone who'd voted for Brexit at lunch. Like, they were so appalled by that. Now, that is really quite an extraordinary state of affairs in the places where we're supposed to be exploring ideas and challenging what we think and challenging new ideas. And we've seen again and again, an example after example, Cambridge University rescinding that invitation to Jordan Peterson, Amber Rudd, for goodness sake, former government minister, being no platform by an Oxford University Society, an Oxford professor who was actually having to be given police protection for speaking out on women's rights after threats from some trans activists. Jacob Rees-Mogg, we all remember that video where he was caught up in a scene with mass protesters very angrily trying to disrupt a university event there, and that's just off the top of my head. This is happening on a grand scale.
Well, I think there are two issues there. So the first issue is the law. Are people actually stopped from doing things they should be allowed to do, like invite interesting speakers, and the government's trying to protect that. But the second is people's personal lives. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody can police who you sit next to at lunch. And that question is therefore a question of monoculture.
Yeah.
The question of whether universities should be a little bit more reflective of society as a whole. And I'm not actually sure you can police for that or change the law to make sure that happens. I think what you can do, when we polled students on free speech issues, we actually just found they were a bit confused. So they all most of them liked free speech in theory, and then we asked them questions like, but do you think UKIP should be banned from university campuses? And 1 in 4 said yes. And our conclusion, this was just before the referendum actually, our conclusion was actually, we forget a lot of students, they're just 18, they're just out of school. They haven't thought through these issues in great depth.
Shocker. Maybe not put, let's not put the early 20s or teenagers in charge. What a surprise.
Yeah, and therefore our conclusion was actually universities should be doughty defenders of free speech and should help their students think through these issues before they start calling for people to be banned from university.
I just think of really clear. If you genuinely think that you can't hear any ideas or views that you don't agree with, university ain't the place for you. You're too stupid. I mean, you literally just say, you are too stupid to be here.
Well, you're certainly not getting the benefit of going to university, which is about meeting people from different backgrounds, from different parts of the world, from different political societies, and learning from them. And sometimes convincing them that you're right and they're wrong.
Absolutely. It's really not complicated. Nick Hillman, lovely to talk to you about this. Really appreciate you joining us. Director of the Higher Education Policy Institute. Thank you for that.